Vince Lucente.
That is I.
Welcome.
Cheers.
Welcome to the Halifax Network, I guess.
Oh, yeah, what a treat.
Right? Jumping right in.
Let's go.
Right? So, we met at our jiu-jitsu club.
Sure did.
And I've always kind of been attracted to, people that have a passion for what they do. And pretty early on in kind of your jiu-jitsu practice, like you kind of see that kind of, real quick, and kind of drew me to you and kind of ultimately led us here today. So I've kind of got a bit of a background, as we were talking about before we got rolling here, about, I've been into some bodybuilding, powerlifting, jiu-jitsu is my thing now. If you talk to some of my friends, they're probably going to say, when Chris gets into something, he gets pretty hyper-focused, and, take jiu-jitsu for example. I mean, it's just kind of, you kind of got to be all in.
You have to, yeah.
And I mean, I think that rings true for life. I mean, anything, my grandfather said, when he was still around, if anything's worth doing, it's worth doing right. And I kind of lived really kind of strictly by that for, today, like presently, and kind of lead my life that way. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, you got a couple businesses that you kind of run. You got the Atlantic Sports Performance.
That's
you
right.
run that out of Bridgewater, which is essentially some sports optimization for sports teams, athletes, I think ranging of all ages.
Yep.
And then you have the durable grappler that's kind of come into development since, I'm assuming, since August. So
it's been fresh.
Right? So since you kind of got into jiu-jitsu, you kind of seen, some places that were kind of lacking potentially for some of our competitors. And, how did that, tell me a little bit about how you kind of come about into the sports optimization and, your kind of segue into the jiu-jitsu community. Why don't you tell us a little bit about
100%.
that?
Yeah, 100%. So, I'm pretty new to the Halifax market, and just in general, like the, just being like in Nova Scotia for 3 years now. I'm from Toronto originally, and it's when I moved here, it was going into a completely different world. And so when I started my career, I'm 12 years into it now, I've been all over the spectrum of sport performance. And I think that has been what has really helped me get to the point where I am now in my career. But it was very much involved. The start of my career was, like you had mentioned before, Chris, which is awesome. It's like, when you get into something, you just go all in.
You got to do it.
And living in Toronto, that entire lifestyle was all in. It was all in, man. Like, I couldn't help but spend as much time. If I wasn't in school or in class that day, I was getting on the bus, getting on the subway, and I was going to the next facility. I volunteered wherever I could. I was, taking the subway, taking the train even out of the city. I loved it. I loved everything about seeing, first working with athletes and seeing the progress transfer to their field of play. That was like where things really kicked off for me. But I learned later in my career that it wasn't just about the training. The further I got into my career, I started to get into more leadership roles in the varsity setting and even the professional sports setting. And I learned a lot about people. And so when you're in the private sector starting off, and again, 12 years ago, looking at where the field was, it was the grind. It was get people as strong as possible. They got to get after it. Like every day is a grind. Let's go. No days off. And I lived that lifestyle, man. I was all over that. It was like, a lot of it was Olympic weightlifting driven. And so we would push, and I would push myself, and I'd be there, and it was just every day was an attack. And you're living in the city of Toronto where there's like no rest for the wicked, right? And it was just all gas, no breaks living. And so you live this lifestyle where you're like, man, like we just got to push, we got to keep going, like all grit, without really recognizing what was happening at that time. We started to see people starting getting burnt out, and we started, like even myself, right? Career burnout was such a significant part of my story. That's getting through it, and I'd always have these cycles throughout the year of all in, all out, followed by every April before the off season would start, the biggest time of the year for us, just get absolutely shattered with illness. I get pneumonia, strep, you name it. It was just like clockwork every April.
Just beat yourself
Just
down.
beat yourself to the ground, right? So we started to find a lot of our athletes did that. When I moved into the varsity setting, I go on from work in the private sector where athletes are coming in during their off season to now working with a number of, in one setting at Seneca College, I worked with, I led 12 teams, 275 athletes. That's 12 different coaching staffs. You're working with athletic therapy. You're working with the athletics department. There's a lot going on for these kids and their students. And so you're starting to see that we can't push the envelope every day, all in, all out. You start to see the people before the athlete. And it was that constraint. And I love that. I think it was, it really shaped where I am today. It really shaped me getting into sports science and using data to drive and inform our decisions, right?
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of, I started to get into that. I started to, no matter the budget that we had, whether it was zero budget, it didn't really matter. It was, what can I do now to help to understand who these people are, who these kids are, and help them to perform better? Because, if we're getting better sleep, we're eating better, we're managing our stress in the academic year, we're going to perform better. They don't have all the time in the world to train. And to be honest, out of the private sector, the athletes are coming to you because it's just on the schedule. When you're in the varsity setting or just in the team sport setting, it's in the schedule. Not everyone enjoys training or sees it the way that we do in the setting.
Yeah.
So we got to push that, right? We got to push with that and say, hey, this person, like, training is not their life. Their sport is their life. And that means so much to them. They want to see themselves go to the next level. Absolutely. They want to go from college to university, from university to potentially play professionally overseas or whatnot. They want that opportunity. We are just the guide in one piece of the puzzle to help to get them there. So I used data to help to inform that. And honestly, just being human-centered. Right. And so I always, the last 5 years of my career could be set into just human first coaching. And that's what it's about.
Awesome. And that kind of leads me kind of to my next question. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned it. I think we kind of come up in kind of the same way, so to speak, where it was like that grind, like you had to go, never stop, no breaks, train past the pain. Like that was like my whole thing in my 20s.
Yeah.
Injury, cool, work around it. Oh, you're hurt or you're sick. Well, go anyway. Like it was, when do you find the mindset started to shift where people started realizing like, oh, we can't just have our foot on the gas all the time. We kind of have to come at this with a bit more of a kind of analytical approach and a bit more strategy so we can kind of, like you say, prolong our life cycle in the sport that we love and kind of really take a deeper look at kind of internally, like what we want to get out of this personally and maybe extracurricularly or professionally, depending on, what level you're at. I'm sure you see different levels of kids on where they have aspirations to be. So when did you find the importance of like optimizing your training schedule, your nutrition? When did you see that shift happen? Because I find like, all through my 20s, it was like that grind, like you just had to go get it done. And like, maybe I started being more conscientious of it into my later 20s, earlier 30s. That's just when I noticed it. When did you find that was kind of a pivoting point in the market or in that industry where people really started taking emphasis on sports recovery?
Yeah, it's always been at the highest levels. It's always been there, right? In one way or another, it's always been there. And where things kind of fell through was that, there was at times we felt as though there needed to be a high expense for that, like high costs. You have to invest in this technology or whatnot. My pivot, this epiphany for me happened again in my second year in the varsity setting, because I was like, wow, the success is coming when these kids feel good. And how do I help them to feel better after they see me than before?
And when you say good, just to interject here, do you mean physically or mentally or both?
In all spaces, right? At the end of the day, the more people that I was exposed to daily that would come into my office and have all sorts of challenges that were presented to them. These students are going through so much. And it wasn't until then where I was starting to assess, well, how can I be more impactful to them? Because training is not the first thing on their mind, as I discussed before. And also, we have Google Forms. Well, what can I do with that? How can I start to assess, hey, how are you feeling? How's your sleep? Are you stressed out right now? What, it's exam time. How is that affecting you? And we start to get into this, that's why like 5 years ago or so, it started to become more accessible. So I think professionals, as the trickle-down effect would happen, it would start to come down into the private sector. It would start to come down into the varsity setting, and we would see it more, albeit at lower budgets, but we would see it. We would see those conversations happening. And I felt that for my own career, my continuous cycles of burnout being, workaholic to say the least, was showing like being all in, all out, but in my career. And that's sharing common ground with my athletes who are all in, all out in their sport. And so we shared these commonalities. The themes are the same. And the way that I was navigating my own personal process found an epiphany to start to feel that like I can help to bridge the gap for a lot of these athletes by asking more questions. And that's where things really started to shift for me personally. And you started to see it a lot more in the mainstream. I started to see a lot more conversations with other professionals, and it was less about, hey, what's your training volume like? What's the sets and reps? Are you doing squats or deadlifts? How are you kind of working with it? What's your RPE, right? And it's like 5 years ago, I got so frustrated with that because you can have the best program, Chris, and this is the thing that really got to me was that it didn't matter if I had the best program if the people that were doing the program, one, were not bought into it and didn't trust the guide myself to be able to execute it with intention. And secondly, if they're too exhausted to do the thing, well, then we're not going to find the adaptations that they want. So what are we working with here? It's kind of like we're, on this hamster wheel of, I have the best program. I have everything figured out from the top down. This is how we're going to periodize training for the year. This is our annual plan. That's important. But we've got to be bottoms up. And that's where that shift started happening with seeing who are these people? How can I meet them where they're at? And that has shifted tremendously that's really my philosophy now moving on, 5 years ago to now is it's sticking to that script of like, we're coaching humans here. We got our challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. And what age do you find these humans are kind of coming into these programs and looking for this additional guidance? Like, do you find parents are buying into it early because they want their kids to perform at the highest level and maybe they think he's going to make, the NHL, the NBA, whatever.
Yeah.
Or do you find it's more like, I know a few of the athletes at our jiu-jitsu club are like, hey, I want to try and push this a little further. Obviously, I'm busy. I got a job. Maybe I got a wife, kids. I know some of the young guys have all of that.
Of course.
And, they're still hungry to get after it.
Yeah.
So what age do you kind of see that they're most commonly kind of looking out for that additional benefit?
It's hard. Like seeing the difference in the market in Toronto versus here in the last couple of years, it's very different. Nova Scotia's been a couple of years behind with regards to sport performance and training. When I got here, it was a really difficult transition that I had to make, being so sport technology heavy and applied sports science heavy, to coming here and having to go really back to basic work. And so now I think, in my opinion, like I really do feel that parents are more invested in helping their kids to accelerate their sport performance.
Absolutely.
But most of the conversations with the kids and parents is surrounded by confidence. And that is where we're pushing this new envelope, for lack of a better term, of I want my kid to be confident in themselves. And I'm not sure if that's because of the lack of social experiences that they get, or, now we're seeing, again, kids aren't going out and playing outside anymore and doing all that. They're really attached to their sports, and kids play a lot of sports in Nova Scotia, I found.
Absolutely.
And so they don't really stick to one thing. At least the ratio of those who do and don't is very different from what it was in Toronto that I experienced. And now that was a bit of a shock to me. So kids are playing so many sports, they're spread extremely thin. And parents just want to see that, hey, this is going to help my kid get faster. This is going to help them to get stronger, and I want that for them. But who are they going to become as a result of this process? And that's the message that I shift to kids. And the same thing goes for our members with the Durable Grappler programs, is that we have high-level competitors and we have people that have no interest in competing. But the message stays the same. It's that you're going to have constraints in your life, like you mentioned before, where you may not have all the time in the world. You may have a kid or kids. You may have a very stressful work life.
Yeah, maybe
you may be on the road. Yeah, exactly. Right. There's so much going on. The same thing goes down to like, if I do jujitsu and I love this, right? I want to keep doing it for the long haul. How can I make sure that I can still do it and feel confident despite my constraints? And how can I work around that? And so that's my role, is that it's your story, man. I'm here as the guy to help you to navigate that process, whether you're a kid, like I have at ASP, which is the majority of our clients are under the age of 16, or our adult members to a durable grappler. It's about confidence, and it's about understanding that you can shatter these internal false beliefs that you may have, that one, you don't think you can do this, or you don't think you can train more often because, or these external beliefs that like, I don't have the time, I don't have the schedule, I can't do it all. And so that it kind of, it's the same message.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can resonate with that. I mean, part of my reason for not competing is, I want to be fully invested in my performance, like 150%. And if I'm not, I feel like I'm doing a disservice to like myself, as well as like, my gym. I obviously want to represent Halifax BJJ. I know some of the younger guys, like, that are kind of getting after it. They're like, oh, when are you going to compete? It's like, you kind of feel like you're letting them down. But at the same time, it's like, I'll be back on the scene when I'm ready. But it's a matter of like balancing all those things, starting a new career, making sure you're up to speed on your social media, this is where this kind of came into effect. Want to meet more people. So, you got to program everything. And I'm a big structure guy because I find when I'm not, nothing really gets done. I don't know. That's just how I work. So I got to write stuff down. I'm heavily calendar driven. Like me and my wife, it's like,
that's awesome.
All right, we're doing X, Y, Z. All right, put in the calendar. Hey, where are you going to be? Oh, it's in the calendar. Just check it out. So
yeah,
I kind of find that really helps, that structure, to kind of alleviate some stress, a lot of to-do lists and all that good stuff. So yeah, I can definitely resonate with that. I mean, to have an additional resource to help you feel good and be confident at your extracurricular activity, whether it be jiu-jitsu, hockey, basketball, soccer, strength training, is definitely huge. And, that kind of negative self-talk is really what I find, has inhibited me to go out there and just get after it. It's intimidating,
it is.
Putting yourself out there.
Yes.
If you fail, failing sucks, but you only fail if you give up completely. Like 100%. You kind of, you're never going to develop if you don't fail. So it's definitely important to kind of, get out there and, put all that kind of nervousness and self-doubt aside and, just dive in and, take what you get out of that, analyze it, and just make improvements from there. So
it's 1% better every day. I'm such a big fan of the aggregation of marginal gains, right? Like James Clear, The Power of Habits, or Charles Duhigg. So if you think about these like small but meaningful steps that we can take every day, it's like, I need to build a system that leverages confidence. As an adult, as a kid, it doesn't matter. It's that we're going to fall to the level of those systems. And the thing about jiu-jitsu, and again, this is like, it's been such a fascinating process for me personally, because I came into jiu-jitsu, I've always tried it. Over the years, I've always tried to bounce around. And, since I was 18, I go to this gym, go to that, and I couldn't sustain it because I was done, like cooked within a month or 2 months, absolutely exhausted.
Just doing it all.
Because that was, my life was all in, all out. Sacrifice everything outside of the goal, get after it. And you get into it. It's again, it's how do I figure out that that's not the way to go? Because I do want to compete. I don't want to let the gym down. I want to explore all these goals, but I don't know how to get myself there. And for me, starting off jiu-jitsu, it was like, oh my gosh, like this is how I'm perceiving jiu-jitsu, that if I go and I get smashed, that I lost, or I have to win every round. And so you're driving after a day, like, oh my gosh, like you self-deprecate, you get down on yourself.
Big time.
We all know that, right? We've all
driving
been there.
home. Like,
driving home, it's like,
man, I shouldn't have made that mistake. I could have beat him.
It's a battle. And like the thing that shifted it for me was like, jiu-jitsu is the first, for me, track back a little bit, because it's important, is that I'm not so like unique in my process. Like I started jiu-jitsu and dug into it because I had a mental health crisis moving here last year. And I went all in, all out. I moved to Nova Scotia without even thinking about the implications it would have on my family. You know, I took a job at a university. I left 2 weeks later, and that was it. And it was like, all right, I'm starting my life. This is the dream job I want.
Right.
I'm here. And I moved and I packed up everything. I bought an SUV, traded in the car, done. And it was like, let's go. 2 weeks later. Didn't even think about it. And the years go on. COVID goes on.
Wow.
And you start to realize, like, wow, I'm 30 right now. And all I did my entire life is my career, is this one thing. And so this story I would tell myself was like, who am I outside of this? What's my identity like?
Right.
I was so wrapped up in being the best coach possible. But it was like, well, who is Vince? And I would always, promote it outside of that for my athletes about, athletes, don't identify yourself as like, I'm a basketball player, because when that time comes, when sports are over for you in university, you are you, and you have to discover who you are outside of your sport. And I didn't do that for myself. And the same thing happened for me, was that like, I need to find something outside of my business, outside of coaching, to find people. My entire life was I wake up in the morning, I coach, I build my business. I didn't have any friends. Let's be honest, I had no friends because all I was wrapped up is like, I can't build relationships with people. I'm very lucky to have my girlfriend. We've been together for 7 years, but it was like, we have our dog. But at the same time, it's like, I'm missing my nephews, right? My nephew is, 3 years old. I see him once every 6 months. My dad, my brothers, my cousins are having kids. With all this, it's like that got to me. So I needed to find something outside to help me with my mental well-being, to find an identity for who I was and find something that I can commit myself to. And so I read Grit by Angela Duckworth.
Okay.
And it's passion and perseverance, right? So I started to redefine what grit meant.
Absolutely.
And all I thought was, at that time, I said, what is one thing I'm going to do this year? I'm going to do it next year. It's my 30th year. I need to find myself. I need to figure out who I am, what I'm about, outside of my career. What can I do for 1 year and go and commit to it and do my best? And it was jiu-jitsu. I've always wanted to get into it. I always wanted to find the right environment. I'm so grateful I found Halifax BJJ because it was the perfect place for me. And I knew the first time I set foot in there, this was going to be different. And that's what jiu-jitsu is for so many people, is that we all start it for different reasons, whether through pain or through pleasure. It's, it has been the best decision I've made in my life because I've been able to discover what I'm about and who I am. And not just having, I used to say this all the time, and when other coaches would interview me or I'd speak to other coaches, like, you're not going to have strength coach on your tombstone, right? You're going to have father, husband,
right,
brother, etc.
Yeah,
that's what it was about, right? And it's like, I'm a huge proponent of stoicism, and that was it. It was like, I read all this, I tell my athletes about it, but I never told these. I never gave my own wisdom or my own guidance a chance for myself, and it crushed me to the point of being, mentally crippling, where I had to be forced to find something through that experience. And that's it. And it's, we get burnt out, we get down on ourselves, but at the end of the day, you get on the mats. And we know so many people, when you step foot in that gym, people are going through their own thing. Nobody's there. And it's like, oh my gosh, like, I live the best life. We're digging. And that's the beautiful thing about jiu-jitsu, is that we're all there. It's an uncomfortable experience during, but nothing makes you feel as good as that does, knowing that you are with other people in a community and we're all trying to get better. And it's not just technically better. It's like, we're all just trying to get to know each other better. We're all just trying to improve our lives. This means something to us that's deeper than just jiu-jitsu and your next cross-collar choke or your next technique. That is the stuff that inspires me and led me to build the Durable Grappler, because of the relationships I built at the gym, and recognizing that I could have something to offer to this realm, this world.
Absolutely.
That can be valuable, because burnout is so high in jiu-jitsu, right?
Very high.
People aren't recovering.
That grind, train, past the pain, that still lives there.
Yeah, and that's it, right? It's
maybe a little less now that you're here.
But it's there, right? It's always there. Even for myself, I find myself, hey, today is not the day to go all in. You had a poor sleep. You should maybe adjust. But your mind tells you, no, you shouldn't, right? So I had to find a way. When I started jiu-jitsu again, it was like, it was crushing me, my recovery. And I had to just get myself into this mode of like, how can I change my self-talk? How can I discover, like, what's one thing? What's that one thing? What is the 1% today that matters? And I started focusing on that and building my game one piece at a time. Like I started full-time January 16th after the COVID bubble. And I said, this year I'm doing it. I'm committing to it. I'm not going to go every day. I'm going to go 3 days a week. That's it. But every day that I go, the one thing I tell all my athletes for years now has been set the intention. Intent over everything. What is that today? And that accelerated my skill development. I was able to recover faster. I felt a lot better when I got in there. And it allowed me to have more peace of mind. And that was what changed, was going from this all-in, all-out attitude in my career and being so obsessively passionate about who I thought I was. And I did not want to carry those same traits into jiu-jitsu. So I needed to find a way that would allow me to be sustainable, because doing it in my career did not offer me that luxury, for, if you will. It crippled me.
Right.
So how do I not let that happen in jiu-jitsu? Although it's so fun and you want to push yourself, where do I go from here? How do I make this better?
So yeah, you kind of join up and you walk in and you think it's going to be this like rough and tumble like group of guys, and next thing you know, they're super awesome, welcoming, great bunch of like guys that are all there for the same reason. We're all there to get better, like you said, whether it's, most of it's physically, but a lot of it too is, for me at least personally, it's been, a mental improvement, like in the way I think. A lot of the sports I did, powerlifting, bodybuilding, I've had my wife and we've been together, been married for a year, we've been together for almost 10 years.
What a treat.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. So I've always had her, and it was kind of like, the gym, it was like work. At the time I was district manager for Atlantic Canada for Unilever, so I was all over the Atlantic provinces, and that was kind of my jam. I'd work, I'd finish work, I'd go to the gym, I'd eat, maybe meet with a work colleague, and go to bed, rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
Whereas you get into jiu-jitsu, and I kind of always felt like I don't need anyone. I can just do this on my own. But you get to that point where you're so invested in what you're doing, you're kind of missing out in another life, competing for powerlifting and bodybuilding. It's very stringent. You have a workout routine that has to be executed every day, or, according to your program, you got to eat a regimented, pretty strict diet. You miss out on some stuff, and like you, I was like, I'm going to be the best I can be at this. And, I got to a pretty high level I was happy with, but it got to a point where I started getting riddled with injuries, and I tore my quad and shoulders and SI joint issues. And then even to the point where the diet was becoming a problem, where I couldn't, having huge GI tract issues. I couldn't, digestion. It was like, it was like you kind of had to take a step back and be like, hey, what are you doing this for?
That is the big question, man. What are we doing this for?
And I couldn't answer the question.
Yeah.
And I looked at, and kudos to everyone doing it. It's no dig. I'll probably maybe get some heat if anyone listens to this, but
no, but it's for anything, right?
Right.
You always got to sit down and ask yourself at least one moment.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. But as a young 20-year-old, it's like, I want to be the best powerlifter in the world, or, Mr. Olympia, or, whatever. All these things, it doesn't hurt to dream, but
not at all.
Once you kind of get a little older and you take stock of how many people actually achieve this. I guess it's kind of getting into that negative self-talk, but I just kind of figured out that it really wasn't what I wanted, I guess. Yes. And I had to kind of pivot and kind of chase that. And, call it cliche, but I listened to enough Joe Rogan. He brainwashed me into joining jiu-jitsu. And
that's awesome.
Honestly, it was always there. I always wanted to try like you, but I knew if I was going to go into that, I had to let some stuff go in my past life. So I went from hugely strength training based to a martial art based training, pure martial arts. Never done a martial art in my life.
Unreal.
and just jumped in 2 feet first, never looked back, and was like, this is what I want to do.
Wow.
And I learned pretty early on that even though I thought I didn't need community, I think I needed it more than I imagined.
Yes.
Because it's been quite a ride and quite a developmental process, physically and mentally. I mean, I'm in the best shape of my life. I mean, I can run 10K any day. I used to be called, my friggin' Joel Jackard used to call me rest roll at the gym, like rest. Yeah. Like he'd make the joke that I'd be holding up the walls for the gym, like because I was just so big. I was so big. I just didn't have any cardio, lifting things up and putting them down. I mean, you don't need a lot of cardiovascular output. And anyway, it just made me want to work that much harder. But to your point, I was like, I'm going to catch up with these guys. Yeah. So I'm going to do 2 classes a day until I literally like rock it till the wheels fall off type thing. And I did, when we're at the old gym on Cornwallis, we didn't have such an extensive training schedule, but we still had a great schedule. So you could train at 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. For sure, any day of the week except Wednesday. And let me tell you, for the first 2 years till I got my blue belt, that's exactly what I did.
What a treat. Wow.
And it's, and they make that joke where you see the memes, like, the purple belt, it's always the level that everybody's the most beat up at. And I mean, it is, I think, kind of, and Joel and Waylon will probably tell you, I think once you kind of get there, it's pretty evident that you have the ability to get the rest of the way. Yep. But, a lot of people kind of kill themselves to get there. Yeah. And then you see kind of people kind of, even like in blue belt, purple belt, they'll peter out. And next thing they're not there because they just killed themselves to get to that level. Yes. And then they just don't have, I don't know, they're just missing the rest of it to get the rest of the way, whether it's the confidence, whether it's the work ethic, the time management, I don't know. But that's where guys like you come in with the durable grappler program and kind of help out. So,
well, that's the thing is that, I when I started this process, again, it was, you mentioned that earlier. You said, I want to be the best that I can be, right? And it's like, I don't need to be the best in the world. If it doesn't happen, that's okay. I need to focus on being the best that I can be. Yeah. And that involves the house analogy. It's kind of like you have a roof, you have a ceiling, and you have a floor, right? And so not every day in your process as you're looking at it, you have this vision. In this vision, there's this home. With that home, you're going to pull the floor, and that is your averages, and you're going to raise that floor up ever so incrementally. And that's going to help you to give you the opportunity to push your ceiling higher. That's your best outputs. And so if I look at my vision of, okay, my house is, on, at sea level right now, and it's a tiny home, 200 square feet. I'm going to build this home and build this foundation. I'm going to improve the law of averages. And I have to understand that I can't just push my ceiling up. I also have to raise my floor. And so what I see so often is that, like, I worked my ass off getting into from white to blue, right? It was just a wild commitment. Started off obsessively passionate, going through these phases of like, wow, like I think I'm just going a little bit too hard right now. Again, I had to learn on my own. I had to learn my own experience that, hey, I'm not getting better. All I'm doing is like every time I go to jiu-jitsu, I'm destroyed. How can I flip that narrative? Right? Okay, I'm a white belt. And you mentioned it before. You see these memes, right? You're a white belt, you're spazzy, this and that. So, okay, well, I'm going to flip the narrative on that, right? I'm going to work really hard, but I'm going to work really smart. And taking the approach of skill development and motor skill acquisition, things that I focus so heavily on in the training room through ASP and through my career, wherever I've been, has been like, we're trying to develop skills, and skills require freshness. Skill development also requires attention to detail. It also requires patience. These are the things, those tenets are floor pullers. Those are the things that pull your averages up ever so slowly. What that is working on a technique and being diligent with it and learning how to accept that technique into your spiderweb or your game. Learning to build a game. And I've always heard, at white belt, you won't have a game. You're only going to learn this. And, you're going to be, everything's going to be a mess. And, depending on when you start, if you start at 30, then your body's going to kill every day. And I hear all this and I think that is that doesn't have to be the way. What if at white belt, why would you not want to learn to build a game? Why would you not want to think about these little things? Because if I just work hard every day, you can work hard. That doesn't mean like you can work super hard in your career. That has no guarantee that you're going to accelerate your career. We know that.
We know that.
We know that with everything we do.
Working hard doesn't really mean results.
It does not. I can't remember what that quote is by Seneca, but it's, if I, no port is favored if you don't know which wind is favorable. No wind is favorable if you don't know which port you're sailing to. Right. So
without direction,
if I don't have direction,
meaning.
I'm shooting at a target that's in the fog.
Yeah, I might as well shoot arrows in the dark.
Exactly.
At the dartboard, right?
So why do we? And this happens so often. Conversations I like to have with so many of our training partners is like, what are you working on today? Mm-hmm. I ask that to the white belts that I roll with. What are you working on today? Is this going to just be another competitive round? Where's your what techniques are you trying to build?
Because what's the average answer?
I don't know. We'll just do it all. Just wherever it takes us. And I say, well, that's 1 month into the game. You're working really hard right now. And I love that you're working hard. And I'm so happy that you found something that you want to work really hard in today. But what's one thing that you want to build out right now? Where are we going to take this round? And those are the conversations that build the mindset to focus on pulling the floor. Because when you pull the floor, then when you apply it in those competitive rounds when it matters, you can then raise your ceiling. That X guard that you've been working on diligently, getting reps and reps and reps of specific training because you had something to work on every time you step foot on the mats, and you clearly communicated that to your training partner, your X guard game or your whatever it may be, your De La Hiva is going to have so much more control. Your sweeps are going to be better. You're not going to be muscling through things. You're not going to be the white belt that is a part of all of those memes. You're going to be technical. You're going to be precise. But if we just work hard every day, you and I both know for a fact that people burn out. They get to blue belt. They worked so hard to get there. They finally get it. And just like any goal that we have in life, right? We're always chasing it. We get it. Oh, man. I got to do that again to get my purple now?
Right.
And now it's, oh, my gosh. I got to do... You hear that, right? You start to see the drop-off. You lose the inspiration because you think, oh, man, like now I got to wait more. I got another 2 years of this. Build a game. Raise your floor.
What are you doing it for, though? Are you doing it for the belt? Are you doing it for yourself?
That's where it starts for so many, right? So many people want that belt, Chris, right? So many people want, like, I want that blue belt, right? Yeah. For me, I got caught in that game so hard, man. I thought, I want that blue belt, where it turned into, like, I don't care anymore. Like, I used to say to myself, like, and I still say it, a good grappler is a good grappler at the end of the day. And so my hope is that every time I set foot on the mats and I've hit that one thing, that intention, then am I just a little bit more precise than I was the day before? I know exactly what I want to work on today. And I know that no matter how tired I am, no matter how exhausted I am, no matter what constraints came my way, did I just work on that one thing? Did I not get ahead of myself and be like, I'm just going all in, all out to exhaust myself and just absolutely shatter myself? No, I'm going to raise my ceiling, have a great performance, or I'm going to pull my floor and improve my averages and give myself more exposures on building a game, building a technical and tactical mind.
Absolutely. I feel like you could probably apply that to general life.
Everything, man.
Everything. I mean, you really got to take it down. And, I'm a bad example. Like, I try to do everything at once.
Me too.
Been there, man. I'm a prime example. And to your point, if we want to keep using jiu-jitsu as an example, I get shown all these awesome techniques, mm-hmm. and some of them would register well and kind of pattern, and you could execute it fairly well.
Yeah.
Even at lower level belts. I have a 2-degree purple belt for people that are listening. But man, it took a while to really be like, oh, coach showed that. All right, boom, 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 and you kept doing it. And I found myself earlier on not focusing on, all right, I'm just going to try and pull into X guard and start working from there.
Yeah.
I just go, all right, well, Josh Whalen heel hooked me 14 times last round because I tried to knee cut through his knee shield. And the next thing I'm caught doing the same thing, and I'm just discouraged because a black belt that's been doing it for 10 years beat the shit out of me, 6 times in one round. So it was just like, I mean, I'm a sucker for punishment, I guess, but eventually I was like, all right, I'm doing the same thing every time, and I'm getting the same result that's negative. So,
you're expecting something different.
Right. I think they call that the definition of insanity, right?
I've been I've been there, and you nailed it. You nailed it, Chris. That's the thing, is that you go around, you talk to a bunch of white belts, like, man, I got smashed today.
All day.
Just got smashed. Okay, cool. What did you get better at?
A lot of
blue belts, purple belts, right? Like, what did you get better at today? What are you improving today? And one thing I've noticed is that, like, you roll with people, you start to identify the game plan that people have, whether it's conscious or unconscious. People play a certain way. They play with what works, right? And so you start to roll with them, and you start to identify, how does this person roll? I could be completely unsuccessful against this person, but I can understand where they want to take the game. And I may not have an answer to that right now, but this is what makes jiu-jitsu exciting for people that lose confidence, is that you have the world at your fingertips on the internet. And what you can do is you can look at that and say, I keep getting straight ankle locked every time I do this. Okay, perfect. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put myself in that same scenario against multiple people. I'm going to see what their reactions are, so that I get caught in it, but I'm going to be able to understand why that happened against 5 people, 6 people, 7. Okay, cool. I did that all in one day. I got so exposed to that. Then I'm going to go study it, because now I'm going to learn. I'm going to devote my learning to that. I'm going to devote my learning to getting out a single leg X. Okay, perfect. And I'm going to refine the hell out of that. And this is the thing. And I guarantee you've had this in your career too, right? We've all had it. When you are learning, when you feel like you have control over your circumstance because you can learn, and we're grateful to have the mental faculties to learn. Absolutely. And I can get outside of the gym and do that. Right? You win, man. You win. You get confidence, you get long-term sustainability, because it's always changing. You're always learning. Jiu-jitsu is an infinite game, man. No matter what belt you're at, doesn't matter. Absolutely. You're always learning.
Yeah, prime example of that. One of my good buds from the gym, Steve Benson.
What a great man.
Yeah, he's great. Anyway, we're fairly evenly matched. He's been training, I think, a year and a bit more than me. Like, nice. He come to the club as a blue belt from out west, and I was still a white belt. But anyway, I noticed we'd have some good rounds, and he's got 2 kids. He didn't have the second one right when he moved in, but shortly after they had the second boy. And all of a sudden I noticed at one point he started getting, it wasn't 50-50, or it wasn't quite even anymore. He was kind of getting the upper hand. And I was like, man, like, you've been getting a little bit better. Like, what are you doing? He's like, I've been, studying some instructionals. And I was like, I don't have time to do that. Come on, like, where do you get, like, you guys? And then I was like, man, he's got 2 kids. He's still studying. And I mean, obviously he's getting better. Yeah. I mean, so I guess the main question here is, like, I noticed a huge % of improvement when I kind of took a step back and, like, okay, maybe I don't have to train 5 days a week. Maybe I can train 3 days during the week, a day or 2 in the weekend, depending on how I feel. And then, like, maybe a day or an hour or 2 out of that week, I study some higher level instructionals and potentially specifically where I'm lacking. What is there, like, a right balance? Like, if people are really set, I mean, obviously I'm a big, like, hands-on, really got to kind of get in there and do it and drill.
Yeah, me too.
And I say I got ADHD. It's never been, like, fully diagnosed or actually diagnosed at all. But I just find it hard for me. Like, I always got to be a go, go, go. So for me to sit down and be like, all right, I'm going to look. It's bad enough to keep my attention, like, for the instructor at the gym, let alone sitting down, listening to, like, John Danaher tell me all the philosophies about why he does a 5-finger grip instead of a gable. And when I'm just like, hey, show me the move. I need to see you do it. Just execute it.
Just execute it.
I don't need all that fluff in the middle. But I mean, that's just the kind of guy I am. I need the data I want. I need to analyze it. I need to put it to play. And then I need to kind of digest and see kind of what happened from there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's really important to kind of take a step back, especially at, I never did it. I'd be that guy. I'd go in to class, all amped up, learn some cool stuff, and then just get to the rolling portion and just get pummeled. But one thing I will say that they've done that I'm not a big fan of, because I like to get right to it, is a lot of times they'll do the positional rolling.
Yes.
Which I find, I like, because it forces me to drill more in those positions. And obviously in a live roll, you're getting more actual reactions, and Buddy's not just falling over because he knows that's what he's supposed to. Some people just kind of ride the wave how they're supposed to.
Tough.
So it's really important, especially at the entry level, kind of preliminary, white, blue belt. I mean, even at my level, it's crucial at all levels to kind of refine those skills and really pick a thing to get better at. I mean, and it's, whether it's in jiu-jitsu, in your professional life, my life in real estate, if I want to get better at talking to people, you got to do it. We got to do it.
Ain't nothing to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Just dive in. And I mean, and you got to get past that fear or that judgment of like, what are people going to think? Are they going to think it's stupid? Or, what about if they see this video and they say it's not good? It's like, well, guess what?
I'm still getting after it.
I'm still getting after it, and they still watched it.
Yeah, they still watched it, and you're putting yourself out there. And that, you nailed it, man. People, I think studying is critical.
Absolutely.
It absolutely transformed not only my game and learning, but you hear things, right? You hear things in that instructional. You watch it over and over and over again, that one video, and you think, every time I watch it, there's always something that connects differently. That message just hit differently because now I have more experience. If I were to watch the videos I started watching a year ago when I started January, if I were to watch those again, it would hit me differently.
Right.
And that's the thing though. But with so many, when they push the envelope so hard in jiu-jitsu early on and they take 1 day off or 2 days off, they start to remember, it's like me, I'm out of sight, out of mind. I need to build my mental game. All great sport performers have 4 pillars that need to be addressed: physical, technical, psychological, and tactical. Okay? 2 T's, 2 P's. You can't just roll off of one thing. You have to address these other pillars. And so you make your game more exciting when you give yourself an opportunity to learn, because that's what enlives our process. And when you do that, you're like, man, I get to I'm going to try that. You get fired up first and foremost. Absolutely. I look at my instructionals and I look at, okay, people will buy all the instructionals and they'll burn their wallet. How about take a quarter of the year? Okay. This quarter, I'm going to work on this system, and it may not work for me in the long term. I may discard this 2 years from now,
right?
A year from now. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to dig into it, and I'm going to give myself, and that's why I love specific training. And here's the thing is that people don't, they have this view of specific training that it's super light and that, it's whatever. No, it's not. It's not. It doesn't have to be that way. I did a training camp with Guy Mendez and Tynan Delper a couple of weeks ago. We were on the mats for 15 hours in 3 days. We did not have one single competitive whatever you want to do round. Everything was specific training. They prioritize study. Same thing that we learned with John Thomas.
Yeah.
Lucas Lepre, precision. You can only get there, and you can't get there just by doing the whole thing. It's like, imagine you go to a soccer practice, your first ever soccer practice, you're going to be this position, and we're just going to play. You go to pro soccer, okay? Like jiu-jitsu, you can be a white belt and you can roll with a black belt. You can roll with someone with 10 years of experience, a professional in the game, a tactical assassin, and you could be in your first ever class. You would not go through that process in any other sport and be like, oh, I'm just going to go play hockey today. Let me go get some skates, some equipment, and I'm just going to play left defense. What does that mean? Where am I going with it? What do I have to do here? This position, this. What if we're on the power play, the penalty kill? How do I, someone's going inside, the hash marks, and someone's going outside against the wall. How do I play? You would not be able to do that.
It's a lot of variables to consider.
Same with jiu-jitsu, right? Jiu-jitsu gives you immediate feedback, like other sports can't.
Yeah.
Right?
You make a mistake, you're going to find out.
Yeah, that knee cut doesn't work. It's not working there.
Right.
All right.
He's on your back now.
He's on your back. He's got you. It happens. Like, you found out. So now you know, as soon as I finish that session, if I can give myself 5 minutes and say, hey, man, Vince, what did you experience today? Like, I worked on today. This morning, I was working on my double pant grip and my X guard. That doesn't mean I'm going to sweep every single person as soon as I get it. I know my sweep options from double pant grip. I'm not going to execute them right now because what I'm going to do is when I roll with people that are not, beginner white belts, etc., I'm going to get it and I want to learn how to, 1, enter X guard from as many places as I can be. 2, I want to get this double pant grip today. That's my only intention. I might get killed. I don't care. If someone puts me in side control, submits me, none of it matters. I'm getting double pant grip. First, I'm going to enter the X guard. Second, I'm going to get double pant grip. Third, I'm going to see what are the reactions they're giving me. Where are their feet being placed? Are they sitting back? Are they trying to stand up immediately? What's going on? And can I master control with that grip? Money. That's what matters. That's like how you go about your process of just being like all in on building this habit of raising my floor ever so slightly. So you don't burn out. You don't put yourself in this position where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm watching so many instructionals. There's so much information out there. It's like, watch one thing. Take 3 months. Watch the same instructional. Own it. Which video are you going to do today in your rounds? And do it.
Absolutely. So I think it kind of to circle back, the main message or the main theme here of kind of our chat is I think people need to kind of chill out. Take a step back.
Yeah, man. Reflect.
And really look at kind of what they're doing and a lot of times why.
Yeah.
And figure out if, whether it's professionally, recreationally, whether you're a professional athlete, you really got to figure out, what you're doing this for. And that kind of leads me into, kind of wrapping this up.
Yeah.
Kind of leads me into something that I've been kind of thinking about and searching for is, when you think about life and how you execute and go through life, like what would you say your big why is? Why do you do kind of what you do? What kind of drives you to be the durable grappler, to run Atlantic Sports Performance? Like what is it? What is your why to get up every day and do that? What is it?
I've learned that the quality of my life comes down to the quality of my contribution.
Wow.
That's it. That's it, man. Like I've read it all. I've gone through so much. I'm big on, thinking, memento mori is one of my mantras I repeat to myself every day. I say it at least a couple of times. And the reason is because you have to remember that you are mortal and that you're not going to be here forever. No day is guaranteed. And so when we start to look at our life like that and we start to see that, Maslow's hierarchy of needs says that the tip of the iceberg is self-actualization.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But when you become self-actualized, don't you want to share that with the world?
I'm big on community, man.
That's it.
No point in being up there at the top.
Exactly.
If you can't bring the rest,
you got to contribute it. You got to share the world.
Yeah, because nobody's going to remember, Chris or Vince that, just cared about themselves and looked out for number one. I mean, yeah, that's important, but I mean, looking out for your family, your community, and bringing people along for the ride is kind of where it's at in my mind.
It's about contributing to help people to find solutions, and that you are the hero of your own story. I'm just guiding you. I'm not the hero of your story. When I coach you, I am not your hero. You are the hero. I'm a part of your hero's journey to be able to find success. In every hero's journey, every movie you watch, most movies you watch, if not all, go through these 12 phases of the hero's journey. And one of them is to find the mentor. And when you seek the mentor, you're going to go through trials and challenges. You're going to face the boss, etc. You're going to come back at the end of the hero's journey. You're going to have the elixir. You're going to return to the new world. But everyone starts in their ordinary world with comfort. And they get this call. And so with that call, they don't always answer it until they're forced to. Until something truly constrains them to say, you need to answer this call. And when they do that, we often feel like we don't have all the answers. And we're facing these trials and things are happening. And it's just like, I need someone to guide me, to help me. We all do. I am a coach and I have my own coaches. We all need someone to help us because they've been through the things that we're currently struggling with. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do, is that it's not about the program. It's not about how strong you are. It's not about me making you the best, the jiu-jitsu player is like, no, man, how do I help you just be a better version of yourself? How do I make sure that like you want to do jiu-jitsu every day and you're a new father, and you want to be able to show your son or daughter that this is what you did while they were being raised and it helped you to become a better father. That's the stuff, man.
Absolutely.
That's the stuff.
All right, man. Well, Vince, I really appreciate you coming on here. I mean, if there's one message we can kind of leave people with is, kind of get out there, be your own hero, get out there, seize the day. So thanks again for coming on.
Cheers.
Really appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
We'll catch you on the mats.
100%, big dog.
Awesome. It was a pleasure.
Nice.